Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Catherine McGarry. I'm the Mayor of Cambridge and Chair of tonight's Special Council meeting. Thanks for joining us as we continue to meet virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, though, we have seen the lifting of restrictions when it comes to vaccination requirements and capacity limits. As we reconnect, as we need to, with our community, please remember to be kind and patient. Not everybody will feel that they want to drop the restrictions right away, and we need to be patient. We're very much looking forward to welcoming all that, though, to city facilities. While we here in Cambridge return to some type of normal, there's a tragedy unfolding in Ukraine as Russia invades. Our thoughts are with the Ukrainian members of our community and also with those who have loved ones in the Ukraine. As you may have seen, the Cambridge sign is now lit blue and yellow, as well as the pedestrian bridge, and the Ukrainian flag has been raised since Friday at City Hall. And for those that have been asking, there is a collection center that's been established at St. Mary's Ukrainian Church at 592 Eagle Street North, where our community is collecting children's clothing, shoes, sleeping mats, and sleeping bags. And they will be open this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for your collections. And thank you all for the messages of support. This is a tough time for so many. Let's show our support in any way that we can. Now, let's get to tonight's agenda. This evening, Council will be moving into closed session shortly after introductions. So for those viewing our live stream or delegating this evening, we thank you in advance for your patience. We'll move ahead now. I'm going to ask our clerk to complete a roll call of Council so that we can confirm everyone's attendance as we're coming to you electronically today.
Councillor Adshade.
Present.
Councillor Devine.
Present.
Councillor Mehta.
Present.
Councillor Hamilton. Okay, Councillor Hamilton will join us shortly. Councillor Liggett will also join us shortly.
Present.
Oh,
Sorry. Hi.
thank you.
No.
Councillor Liggett will join us shortly as well. Councillor Mann.
Present.
Councillor Reid.
Present.
Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Mayor McGarry.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. And in addition, we're going to welcome the staff that we have joining us today, and joining us electronically. We have our City Manager, David Calder, our Deputy City Managers, Dave Bush, Hardy Bromberg, Cheryl Zonleiter, and Yogesh Shah, our Chief Financial Officer, Cheryl Ayers, our City Solicitor, Lisa Shields, our Chief Planner, Lisa Prime, our Director of Engineering, Kevin DeLiebeck, and we also have staff from other divisions that will be joining us this evening when their item is up for discussion. Clerking the meeting today, we have our City Clerk, Danielle Manton, our Deputy Clerk, Jennifer Shaw, and Mallory Greenoff, Council Committee Services Coordinator, and Rachel Latour from our Clerks team as well. And thanks again today to our Technology Services staff, Ayesh De Silva, who's assisting with logistics for today's meeting. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is a land traditionally used by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. A reminder now to members of Council that the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act requires members of Council to declare any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to a matter under consideration. So members of Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? And seeing none, we're going to move ahead now. So we're now going to move into closed session. So Councillor Wolf, I believe you have the motion for us to move into closed. Will you please read it in its entirety?
Through you, Madam Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Devine, that in accordance with section S239, bracket 2, bracket C of the Municipal Act 2001, Council convene in closed session at 5:05 p.m. to consider the following subject matter: a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, potential property acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Are there any comments before we move to the vote? Seeing none, I'm going to ask our clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshade,
In favor.
Councillor Devine,
Aye.
Councillor Mehta,
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor.
Councillor Mann,
In favor.
Councillor Reid,
In favor.
Councillor Wolf,
In favor.
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you. So your patience, please, as we stop the recording and move into closed session. Welcome back, everyone. We're now going to rise from closed session. Councillor Mehta, you have the motion to rise. Please read it in its entirety.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I do. This motion to rise from closed session is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. The recommendation that council rise from closed session and reconvene in open session at 5:36 p.m.
Thank you very much. And we're now going to call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshade,
In favor.
Councillor Devine,
Aye.
Councillor Mehta,
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor.
Councillor Mann,
In favor.
Councillor Reid,
In favor.
Councillor Wolf,
In favor.
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you. So while in closed, discussions occurred amongst members of council pertaining to property acquisition matter, and staff were provided with instruction. So this evening, we do have two presentations for council, and our first presenter is Anne Crow, Chair of the Grand Watershed Trails Network, and she's going to provide a presentation on the Grand Watershed Trails Network. So I see Anne just coming in. Good evening, Anne. Are you there? It's Mayor McGarry.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's good to have you with us this evening. Thank you. And once the presentation starts, you can ask our clerk to move the slides forward to you. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, you can hear me?
Sure we can.
Okay, so this is an update. We came before, you can go on to the next slide. We came before Cambridge City Council in 2016 when we were just getting going. So this is more than just about having a trail or a bunch of trails. It's about creating a network, including the river, that will connect people to not just the river, but heritage, cultural, and outdoor experiences. As you can see, that's a map of the watershed on the left, which shows that the Grand River goes from the Dundalk Highlands all the way down to Lake Erie. And we want to have a trail that's one trail that goes through the entire watershed that's accessible to everybody, all ages, interests, and abilities, that can be cycled or walked. So next slide. Thank you. So this is a screenshot. So we're going to be inaugurating our new website on the 4th, on Friday. And this will be an interactive map. You'll be able to zoom right in and see exactly where the paddling access points are. And you can see there's a lot of them. The little red circles are warnings of things like dams that you have to portage. So next slide, please. So this is what if you zoom right in, we're also going to have all the amenities. So I clicked on the Cambridge Mill, and it will, if you do that, you'll get information about the website, phone number, address, and what it is. And you can see all the amenities on the left. Next slide. So this is, I'm just briefly going to show you going down from the headwaters. There's really only a tiny little green trailway, the Upper Grand Trailway. There is a rail trail that goes to Owen Sound that currently you can't cycle, but they're upgrading it more or less as we speak. So this section is on quiet back roads. The orange is busy roads or highways that you obviously want to avoid if you're a cyclist. Next slide. From Bellwood Lake, there's the Elora Cataract Trailway and the Cottontail Road Trail, which is on quiet back roads. So that's a great route, takes you all the way down to the Kissing Bridge at West Montrose. Next slide. And I'm skipping over Cambridge because I'll come back and talk about Cambridge in more detail. From Cambridge, you all know about the Cambridge to Paris Rail Trail, and then that connects with SC Johnson and goes down into Brantford. And Brantford came up with the idea of having a loop through Brantford. So next slide. We have a loop that goes up both sides of the river in Brantford, which I think was a great idea. And you can see a couple of the historical sites that you'll see on your way as you cycle around the loop. Next slide. And our final section takes you down to Lake Erie. You can see there's a lot of orange on this map. That's Highway 54, but they are talking about putting cycling facilities off-road along there. It crosses the river and goes down River Road on the opposite side and then divides so that you could go down either side from Dunville and hit Lake Erie on either side of the river. So next slide. The big question for Waterloo Region was how do we get from West Montrose to the Cambridge to Paris Rail Trail? And next slide. There were two real options. I'm kind of sad about Walter Bean, but Kitchener has some issues with Walter Bean on private land and problems, and Woolwich is talking about a hiking only trail. So that left us with the Trans-Canada Trail. And as you know, in Cambridge, the Trans-Canada Trail and Walter Bean actually go along the Grand Trunk Trail, so it's not really a question. Next slide. So I took this to, so this is a blow up of what the trail looks like going through Cambridge. It basically follows the same route as the Trans-Canada Trail. Next slide. Okay, there we go. So I took this to the Cambridge Cycling and Trails Committee, and they came up with a great idea of a loop, which I think is actually one of your cycling loops. It takes the Speed River Trail, which is great because that adds in a tributary, because this is supposed to be a network that includes the tributaries, and goes all the way up to Hespeler and then comes back down and goes across the pedestrian bridge, which I love. So it connects into a full loop, and then you can connect down to the Cambridge Paris Rail Trail. Next slide. So this shows you if you could complete the Walter Bean Trail with a loop in Waterloo, a loop in Cambridge, and then the Guelph just did their Trails Master Plan, and it includes a proposal to have an on-road trail connecting Guelph to Hespeler. And this is pretty much what the route of that would. So that gives you a loop through Guelph. And they're also talking about upgrading that little orange section, which is a rather nasty, busy road. There is a rail trail that's still used by the railway that would bridge that. They might be doing something like our spur line in Kitchener. So that's basically our proposed route. So I'm bringing it to you just to update you and to get feedback in case anybody has some great ideas about how we can improve it. And next slide. Just to give you one more vision, this is a screenshot of the Waterfront Trail that goes all the way around the Great Lakes. The blue is the Grand River and the black is existing rail trails. So you can see what Waterloo Region could become in this, cycling. It could create multiple circuits within this Southern Ontario. So I think there's an enormous potential to connect us to all the other great cycling infrastructure in the province. And I think that's pretty much it. Maybe the last slide. Yeah, there we go. So we're in the process of consulting. We've had some great advice from different municipalities along the way and some trails committees. We're inaugurating a new website, which we're hoping will become the stop if you're coming to Waterloo Region, whether you're a local, living up in Dundalk and you want to see what Waterloo region has, or whether you're coming from halfway around the world. We want to be the one-stop shop to get all the information that you could possibly require to come to the Grand River and enjoy the trails. So thank you very much. Oh, there you go. There's our new website.
Oh, there
on
it
March 4th.
So we'll be able to link in at that point. That's wonderful. Well, thank you, Anne. I think it's appropriate that you're coming now. We've started this month in winter and we should be ending it in spring. So I think as we're springing forward to look at new outdoor activities, this has been a good time to bring this to us. Well, you've generated a number of questions. So I'm going to go to Councillor Reid first, who wants to pose a question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Anne, for your presentation. It was very thorough. My question is around bicycle tourism. That's something that I've been very interested in for a number of years, and that we can encourage more bicycle tourism within our city, and particularly, I guess, around Hespeler. And so I'm wondering if you could comment on how this would help with that.
Well, we are working with the regional tourism offices, and so they're very aware of the project. And so they will be marketing it. And our idea is to be really, over time, to become the place that people come if they're interested or they get directed here, that this will encourage tourism. Because I've done a bit of bicycle tourism myself, and you really need somewhere where you can get all the information. Where are the hotels? Where are the restaurants I can eat? Are there things that I can do? So I think we're going to be a part of the solution that will draw people to this area.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We'll go next to Councillor Mann. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't have a question, but I was going to make a comment, so I'll hold off.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton next.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. And thank you very much for your presentation, Ed. It's very thorough, and I am an avid cyclist, so I'm very excited to check out these trails. I do have a question, though, and I was just wondering, because the proximity of the trails are close to so many rivers, and especially the Grand River, if you've thought about reaching out to First Nations and Indigenous communities just to hear their thoughts, their ideas, and they might even be able to enrich the report and potential access to trails in the future. So have any of those conversations occurred so far, or are they planned for the future?
Yes, we have had contact with Six Nations. In fact, I was at a meeting with the Six Nations Council on Monday where we discussed this. Initially, they were reluctant to have us take it. Obviously, Highway 54 is on the opposite side of the river from Six Nations. When we had discussions a couple of years ago, they were not ready to welcome the trail through Six Nations, but they expressed a lot of interest. And there was one councillor on Six Nations who thought that this could potentially bring tourists to, their craftspeople in Six Nations who would be able to sell crafts that, maybe set up a booth somewhere along the trail. So we're certainly in discussions with them, and I think there's some really interesting possibilities.
That's great to hear. It's wonderful to hear that it's already being discussed. So thank you very much, Anne. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I've got a few questions for my own. And it was great to see that slide showing the network of the main cycling facilities and trails throughout Ontario, including the very popular Waterfront Trail. And just wondering a couple things. With the Waterfront Trail, will there be a connection at some point from our area into the Waterfront Trail? And how would this be signed? How would you mark the trail?
I think a lot of people have a lot of concerns about signs, but I think from the point of view of a cyclist, all you want is a little sign with your logo on it, right? And you could have a post with 3 different logos. TransCanada, because TransCanada overlaps with the Waterfront Trail in places. So you just kind of follow your little logo, and when there's decision points, you hope there'll be a bigger sign. So that would certainly be one of our next things to look at opportunities for adding signage and wayfinding, and certainly working with things like the Waterfront Trail so that you just add our logo to the trail signs. And it's up to the municipalities, right? The municipalities do the signage, we would just help.
Thank you. And I knew this was coming forward. So I was actually in contact with the CEO of the Trans-Canada Trail recently, and Eleanor McMahon, and she did say that there may be some potential funding coming forward to sort of augment some of the trails through our municipality with the opportunity potentially of funding that would sort of complete some of the trail system and sort of fill in the gaps amongst our network. Can you provide any information about that?
I hadn't actually heard that, but I will certainly contact them. We have had contact with Trans-Canada Trail, and they're perfectly fine with what we're proposing to do. I think if you put a name on a trail and put it on a map, then it draws funding. And so I think this gives the opportunity for getting funding to upgrade the trails, increase the connectivity, improve signage, all of those things.
Thank you. And I guess my last question would be regarding some of the other municipalities, and I'm just delighted to see that fill in the gap with some of the cycling facilities. I wanted to give a shout out to our Trails Advisory Committee here in Cambridge, who's been very, very focused on completing some of the networks that we have that also integrate outside the cycling facilities and the cycling network of trails within Cambridge. So I'm delighted to see the loop around our waterfront, Speed River, as well as the Grand and other areas within here. So when it comes to kind of looking at filling out the trail, how long do you think it'll take other municipalities as well to sort of complete their own work and fund and get going on some of the trail connectors that we need to complete the full trail network?
I guess I don't look too far in the future. I just have a vision and I just keep plodding on towards it. And my feeling is once you put a line on a map, I was on the Trails Committee in Waterloo, and we put some lines on a map, and within 5 years, those lines had become routes within Waterloo. So that's my feeling. And I think with the Waterfront Trail, that started as a project for the waterfront in Toronto. And it was like all the way along, it's me too, me too, me too, me too. And the municipalities that initially didn't want to have anything to do with it are coming begging to, like, why aren't we included, right? So that's how I anticipate it. We'll go for the ones that really want it and then move on to the next one.
Okay, well, that sounds awesome. So thank you very much for an inspiring presentation for tonight, and it'll have all of us looking towards the trails. I see one last hand up here because I know he wants to make a comment. So thanks for joining us, and please go ahead. Please go ahead, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. And thank you very much for the presentation that you provided and for showing us what is available throughout Waterloo Region and beyond. I think it's so important for all of us to see that and to know what is available. And Councillor Hamilton and I have been talking for the past 3 years about getting together and get out on bikes and doing the trips. So you have really encouraged us to do that. And now the challenge is out there because he and I have to do that this summer. And you have just made us commit to that again. So thank you for that, Anne. And we'll let you know when Councillor Hamilton and I complete the trip.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, after we're now dreaming of spring, we'll go on to our next presentation this evening, and I think it'll be a verbal update, but it's being provided by Greg DeRocher, President and CEO of Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. And again, Greg will provide council with an update on the Cambridge Visitor Services Annual Report. And I'll just reach out to see if Greg can hear me. Welcome.
I can.
And I can see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Welcome.
It's wonderful to see everybody in one dimension, but it'll be even nicer to see everybody in 3 dimensions soon. So did you want me to just proceed, Your Worship?
Yes, sir. I think you're well known to all of us.
Well, Greg DeRocher, President CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. 750 Hespeler Road in the wonderful community of Cambridge. Thank you very much, Your Worship and members of council, for affording us the opportunity to come and talk to you about our program that is really a partnership with the city of Cambridge and has been for many, many years. As most of you know, we have managed visitor services on behalf of the city since 1981. Actually, 41 years. The Chamber has been the smiling face of people who are most often we're the first ones that they see when they come into our community, and we want to make sure that our face is always smiling when they do show up. In 1998 or 98, the Chamber and the city formed a partnership to raise the bar on the effectiveness of visitor service. Of course, that's what led to the building of our facility at the southwest corner of the 401 and Hespeler Road, the $1.2 million Gateway Business and Visitor Information Center that the Chamber raised money for, and over a number of years finally paid it off, and we're very happy about that, and very excited about what that does for our future. So we've been here on June 21st. We'll actually have been here 20 years in the facility. So or 21 years rather in the facility. So we're very excited about what we've gone through. It's been a struggle in some cases. And, you know, when I think back on the 20 years or so that I've been here, when we opened the building, we've managed the operation very successfully, but with many disruptions to the tourism industry along the way. And a lot of you will remember these, 9/11, SARS, MERS, H1N1, of course, the recession of 2008, but the biggest disruptor, of course, is the 2020 pandemic. But all through these events, we've seen disruptions to the industry, but the pandemic has obviously been the most serious one and the most devastating. And I'm just amazed at the resilience of some of the businesses who have literally been closed. A lot of them have just been shut right down since March of 2020 and have only been up for a couple of breaths, yet they continue on and they look optimistically to the future. So we're, you know, so proud of those businesses, especially those in the tourism industry where they've been affected for, you know, almost 24 months of closure. Much of our efforts, of course, through the whole process have been to work with government of finding solutions to keep their hopes alive, of finding some funding paths and opportunities for them, develop safe operational practices as the opportunities for openings came along or were coming along. As you know, it's not for most businesses, even not-for-profits or charitable organizations that are in the tourism space. It's not as simple as just closing the door and sitting at home for 24 months, you know, or maybe more. We hope not more, because there's, you know, operational things that have to happen. Think of, you know, I was just thinking about it today, you know, how on earth does a place like African Lion Safari survive when they've got to keep the animals alive? They've got to do all of the maintenance issues around the yard, and they certainly have to care for the animals that are in their care, custody, and control. So, you know, it just doesn't happen. Some of them were trying to do some revenue generation, you know, obviously within public health guidelines, but aside from the advanced funding programs that the federal and provincial levels of government provided, we also provided some tools for safe operation during COVID by partnering with our colleagues, and we developed a web platform called chambercheck.ca. There, not only can best practices be sought out and staff and management training for COVID safe practices can be taken absolutely free, but direct links to government programs for financial assistance, et cetera, et cetera. The Cambridge Chamber of Commerce actually piloted a program for the federal and provincial governments to distribute rapid antigen screening kits directly to small and medium-sized businesses. The government had all these kits and didn't know how to distribute them effectively and efficiently. So we actually put our hand up and said, look, you know, we've got an idea or a plan. So since April of 2021, out of our visitor center and Chamber of Commerce, we've distributed over 1 million rapid screening kits to small and medium-sized businesses throughout the region of Waterloo. Without our location and our visitor center, this would never, ever, ever have been possible. You know, it's quick and easy access. We've got space to be able to store some of these, and we just never be able to do what we did for small and medium-sized businesses African Lion Safari, organizations like that that depended on, they still had to have staff in, but they needed to have a safe environment as well. So a local manufacturer also, Eclipse Automation, who stepped up immediately. I think it was before the end of March of 2020, and started the design on manufacturing N95s, a domestic supply of masks here in Canada. They donated 1.5 million ASTM level 3 medical grade masks that we could distribute, as well as the kits to small businesses who otherwise were maybe using deficient type masking. And that was amazing as well. So we distributed about 1 million of those masks, along with our 1 million rapid antigen kits. And Lysol Canada heard about our program as well and stepped up. And I thought it was a little bit crazy, because one day they stopped here at the office and unloaded about 46 skids of Lysol wipes. And we've been handing them out not only to small businesses, but also to organizations like shelters and food banks, trying to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to keep their space safe and clean through this program. So this kind of led us to rethink how we can start to deliver visitor services, minimizing physical contact and making the experience comfortable for visitors, because we knew that there was going to be a new tomorrow. So during the summer of 2021, we installed new acrylic display racks in our atrium area. We mobilized a program to build a digital acrylic display library of things to do and places to see with QR codes attached to them. So there was a more touchless, contactless visitor center that enables us to serve visitors even in the most delicate of times. Well, of course, we know that visits to our community, were dramatically reduced over the last 20 months, largely because of travel restrictions. And we know many attractions were closed anyway. Our plant tour program at Toyota has been suspended from March 2020, and we're hoping to open mid-spring this year. But visitors still find us and gather information for when the time comes that they can return. So most of our contacts of late have been, via email or phone call, but we've had many drop in, oddly enough, to use our new and improved self-center service operations. But most of them were corporate visitors that are in town doing business, and that's kind of understandable because essential businesses were still in high gear. The comparison is in 2019, 2020, we had nearly a full year of normal visitor traffic, with the exception of the last couple of months. But while our contacts were down, they weren't as low as we thought. We were down about 24% over that nearly full year of 2019 and 2020, up around close to 16,000. And that's traffic both, again, by email, phone, and in person as well. So we're kind of looking forward. We anticipate a slow return to normal, but we're excited because of the minor renovations that we've made to date. More extensive ones are coming to make our business and visitor information center more modern, accessible, and more importantly, more comfortable, that people can look forward to a safe but restful place to stop and rest their weary bones after being in a car for a long time on the 401, and maybe have an opportunity to take a closer look at our community. So while it's been extremely stressful and difficult 2 years, we're excited about the future of the Gateway, what it can be for our community. We're now entering year 2 of our 3-year contract with the city. We have worked extremely hard to reduce our burden. In year 1 of the agreement, we reduced our budget from the previous agreement by 28%. This current year, we again reduced the budget by a further 16%. So we're hopeful from the pandemic perspective, that we're heading in the right direction. And that as society feels more and more comfortable, as many of our local attractions open up, we are quite confident. And with the last presentation you had with the trail cycling aspects of visitors returning, we know that it's going to be terrific. So thanks very much for this opportunity and for your support of our small and medium-sized businesses. There's a whole lot the city has done to help. We don't see those banners in times like this. Nobody seems to see them. We only maybe see the negative, but you're standing up for business, and we appreciate that, and business appreciates it as well. And while we'll still be paddling upstream for a little while, I know we'll get there. All of us will get there. So thanks very much, Your Worship.
Thanks so much for joining us this evening. And I'm going to coin your new term, the new tomorrow, because that's what it feels like today. And certainly appreciate your update. I'm going to turn now to members of council to see if there's any questions for you. And seeing none, I wanted to thank you again, Greg, for all that you do for the Chamber. I know that there are mayors across Ontario that were pretty jealous, and then they took advantage of the rapid test program that you rolled out for our businesses. And I wanted to thank you on behalf of Cambridge Council and all of our businesses. Thank you for the work that you have done in coordination with Ian McLean and KW. And I think I'm seeing you on Business to Business on this week. So looking forward to that. And I do see that in the meantime, there is a hand up. So I'm going to go to Councillor Reid. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I had a comment, not a question, so that's why I waited. And I wanted to extend my thanks to Greg and the Chamber for their ability to pivot. You certainly did that and did it well, and you were an example for all of our businesses that were also being asked to pivot from what they normally do to something new. So thanks again, Greg, and on job well done.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good evening, folks.
You too.
Bye-bye.
And I see Councillor Liggett has joined us. Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you know, under the municipal conflict of interest ask, I'll just ask if you have any items of pecuniary interest to declare for this evening's agenda.
No, I don't. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're now moving on to the consent agenda for consideration. So please note that if a member of council wishes to comment on any of the consent items, please let us know by using your raised hand feature. And in the interest of time, we will look to vote on the consent procedure in a block. But if you wish to comment, you're welcome to do so. Councillor Hamilton, I believe you have the motion. Will you please read it in its entirety?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Reid. The recommendation that all items listed under the heading of consent agenda for March 1st, 2022 be adopted as recommended. 8.1, Special Council Minutes, February 15th, 2022. 8.2, Committee of Adjustment Advisory Committee Meeting Minutes, December 15th, 2021 and December 16th, 2021. 8.3, Economic Development Advisory Committee Meeting Minutes, December 8th, 2021. And 8.4, 2022 Film Report, 22-004-CRE.
All right, thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Does any member of council wish to pull any items from the consent agenda? And thank you. Just before we go forward, I just wanted to advise that the consent agenda was updated to include information items, and this the fire report was placed in the wrong section of the agenda in error, but council may still pull an item or comment on any item within the consent agenda. So, are there any questions for staff at this time? Councillor Liggett, go ahead.
Thank you. Are you saying that the fire report is in the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. My question has to do with the fire department. We had an expectation of the master plan update coming to us. I first asked about it, I'm thinking in December 2020. And then again in the spring of 2021, and we kept being promised that that was going to come to us, and then it was supposed to come to us in July and never came to us. And here we are over a year later, and we're still waiting for that update to the master plan. I see that part of 2022, it's listed that that's supposed to come to us, but that was supposed to come to us almost a year ago, we were promised. So when in 2022 is it coming? And is it definitely coming?
Thank you. I'm going to turn to our fire chief, Chief Arnold, for a response. Welcome, Chief Arnold.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm sorry I was late signing in. I missed part of the question. If Councillor Liggett would mind repeating the question. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. December 2020 chronology. I first asked for an update to the fire master plan. Then in spring, when we didn't get it, we were promised that it was going to come to us in July, I believe, of 2021, last summer. Then nothing came to us, and we still don't have it, even though it's in your report that it's to come to us sometime in the coming year. I'm wondering when it is coming to us and if we are guaranteed a time on that.
Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Council. Thank you for the question. The fire master plan process had been delayed for a number of reasons. Particularly, it was difficult to obtain a consultant. So best information I have from the consultant is that we should be providing at least a preliminary report to Council sometime within Q4 of 2022.
Through you, Madam Chair, a preliminary report or an updated fire master plan?
My understanding, through you, Your Worship, my understanding is that a series of reports should be coming forward, including a preliminary report, which would be provided to this particular council in October. Potentially earlier than that, but I have no guarantees from the consultant at this point.
Again, through you, Madam Chair, so that's not the updated master plan?
In its entirety, I don't believe it will be.
Okay, I'd like to comment on this after Councillor Reid has finished her question.
Councillor Reid, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. As I was reading through the fire report, it came upon the fact that you had a relatively new equity and diversity and inclusiveness committee or role in there. And I wondered what their role actually was and how they are achieving whatever their role is.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Your Worship. The Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion team is a group of individuals from within the fire service itself, assisted also with members from Human Resources. And we are working together as a team through various working groups. And those working groups are delivering recommendations up the chain of command to myself, where we can act upon those recommendations to improve the working conditions, to create a safe workplace for our employees, and overall improve the morale and the performance of our employees.
So would it also assist in having equity and diversity and inclusion in future firefighters in recruiting?
Through Your Worship, to Council, thank you for that question. We are actively recruiting members of various communities. We think it's important that we represent the community that we serve, and I think by doing so, we are stronger and we provide a better service by doing so.
So I'm wondering how you achieve that. Is there any special way that you reach out to the community to achieve that?
Through Your Worship, the plans or the implementation of that particular initiative has not been mapped out as of yet. That will be one of the key performance indicators, if you will, to measure what our baseline representation of the community is, and compare that down the road to future numbers. And we hope to be able to illustrate that process and that progress rather.
All right, I thank you very much for that. And I think that maybe you can help lead the way in other ways within the city too, that we can recruit people from particularly BIPOC people, LGBTQ people, so that we are more diverse throughout our city. So I thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. And I just had a quick question as well. I noted just in the background, Chief Arnold, that I know the simplified risk assessments and compliance reports were discontinued by the Office of the Fire Marshal over a decade ago, and that the new community risk assessment is required by July 1st, 2024, per Ontario Regulation 378-18 is being completed with a consultant as part of an updated fire master plan. And my question would be just about the date for the new community risk assessment. Will this be the first time that it's required by the province and will then be presented by fire departments?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, that is correct. This is the first time a community risk assessment is mandated through regulation. And the process that we are currently going through at Cambridge Fire will put us almost a full 2 years ahead of that mandate.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. Seeing no further hands, I'll move on to comments.
Good.
Any comments? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Liggett, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I find this very upsetting that once again, I'm bringing up the topic of the fire master plan. And I really feel very uncomfortable being continually being put into that position of discomfort, asking for it on a repeated basis. It's something that our community needs to know. It's something we need to know going forward. What are we doing as far as that master plan? Our other one is outdated, and we put at risk, our community. We put at risk our firefighters. We put at risk the real estate in our community, and I find it very concerning that we have not done it. And I also find it concerning that it hasn't been brought to our attention in recent months that it has been postponed till the last quarter of 2022. I just think it's a very important document, and I understand that COVID has gotten in the way and consultants were hard to get, but I think it's a very, very important document, and we can't lose sight of it. We could have new people on council when this comes around, and I don't think they'd be versed enough to really go through that and see if there's things that they want to have changed or added to in the future. So I just needed to say that out loud.
And I'm going to go to Dave Bush. Please go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. And I echo the councillor's sentiments that we'd like to get this exercise done as quickly as possible. We're in year 9 of our previous fire master plan. It was done in July of 2013. They're typically 5 to 10 year view. So we're still working with that document. It's still active. No one is in harm's way. Our fire folks are some of the best in the province, and they are completely competent and able to execute. The fire master plan currently is underway. We're at the GIS and data management part of the process. It does take time because it's the data analysis piece, but we're hopeful in the fall that we'll have a good draft and that we can bring that back, and we hope to wrap it up probably most likely into the new year. But the work is underway, and we're participating internally, both as part of technical services and our fire team. So, and yeah, let's get it done as quickly as possible. We agree. We did come back to council with the the RFP. It was responded. We only had one response and it wasn't adequate. So we did go out and reached out and connected with our current vendor, which completed our last master plan in 2013. So we're well underway to that, and we'll expedite it as quickly as we can.
Thank you. And I did note the comment from Chief Arnold that will be actually a couple of years ahead of the July 1st, 2024 date. Okay, and seeing no further comments, we'll go to the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshade,
In favor?
Councillor Devine, Councillor Devine,
Aye.
Councillor Mehta,
In favor?
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Liggett,
In favor?
Councillor Mann,
In favor?
Councillor Reid,
In favor?
Councillor Wolf,
In favor?
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you.
Good
We'll now
evening.
move on to consideration of reports. And up first is agenda item 9.1.1, report 22-007 CRS T22-05 First Avenue and Grand Avenue the reconstruction. Councillor Adshade, you have this motion. Will you please read it in its entirety?
I do, your worship. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wolf. That report 22-007 CRS T22-05 First Avenue and Grand Avenue reconstruction be received. And that the tender T25-05 be awarded to Navicon Construction Incorporated, 53 Sharp Road, Unit 1, Brantford, Ontario. And further, that council approve the transfers to from reserve funds as outlined in the financial impact section of this report.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to any questions from members of council for staff. And seeing none, are there any comments from members of council? And seeing none, I'm now going to ask our clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshade,
Favor?
Councillor
In favor?
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Liggett,
In favor?
Councillor Mann,
In favor?
Councillor Reid,
In favor?
Councillor Wolf,
In favor?
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you. The next item is item number 9.1.2, report 22-011 CRS T22-8 Henderson, Bella Street and Cribb Street reconstruction. Councillor Devine, I believe you have this motion. Will you please read it?
Moved by Councillor Devine, seconded by Councillor Reid. Recommendation that report 22-011 CRS T22-08 Henderson, Bella Street and Cribb Street reconstruction be received. And that it is recommended that tender T22-08 be awarded to Terracon Underground, 14 Papel Road, Brantford, Ontario. And that council approve the transfers from reserve funds as outlined in the financial impact section of this report. I so move.
Thank you. So I'll turn now to members of council to see if there's any questions of staff or for staff from members of council. And seeing none, are there any comments that council wishes to make? And seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshade,
Favor?
Councillor Devine,
Aye.
Councillor Mehta,
In favor?
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor?
Councillor Liggett,
In favor?
Councillor Mann,
In favor?
Councillor Reid,
In favor?
Councillor Wolf,
In favor?
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you. So our next item on the agenda is item number 9.2.1, Report 22-011-CRE, Temporary Patios and Temporary Road Closures Review. And this evening, we do have James Goodrum, our Director of Economic Development, available for any questions on this item. And Councillor Liggett, you have this motion. Will you please read it?
Sorry, I'm desperately looking for the motion as you speak. So if I could have the clerk read it,
Sure.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Madam Clerk.
Mover, Councillor, oh, I'm sorry. Bear with me for one moment.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
You didn't, I was on the wrong page. Okay, moved by Councillor Liggett, seconded by Councillor Ermetta, that report 22011 CRE temporary patios and temporary road closures review be received, and the council approve a maximum funding amount of $50,000 to be provided to the temporary patio and road closure project to support the request of the Hespeler and Downtown Cambridge BIAs as outlined in this report. And that a funding transfer of $50,000 from the Economic Development Reserve account be approved, and further that the city's sidewalk terrace application fee for sidewalk patios be waived until December 31st, 2022.
Okay, are there any questions for staff? Councillor Mann, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Just a question that was raised by a member of the public earlier, and that was whether or not this should be something that occurred. Do we have to do this on an annual basis, or is it something that we can just have a decision made on to continue with this annually and not have it come back to council? And I just wanted to run that by staff to see if there are any drawbacks to doing that. And I can think of some, but I just wanted to ask staff for their opinion.
Nobody else would like to jump in. I can take a stab at that through the mayor.
Go ahead.
It is something that staff would be willing to take direction from council on, in terms of if this is something that you'd like to see on a more permanent basis. It is definitely something that we could evaluate the pros and cons of and bring us a report back, as well as building that into our base budget annually. The reason we're coming back now is we need a funding source, obviously. But if the direction from council is to make this permanent and build it into our base budget, then that's something we'd definitely be open to direction for.
Thanks, James. And I appreciate the fact that you need to have a decision now for tonight for this year.
Yeah.
And maybe that is something, and through you, Madam Chair, I wonder if that's something that we need to turn to council and ask if that's something we want to do for future years, so that staff don't have to keep coming back.
And I'm just thinking out loud, but I'm wondering if when we do a wrap-up report, we could look at the success at that point and see if there's any adjustments that we want to make for future years, and bring it forward that way, and maybe do a. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Councillor Devine, please go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I agree with Mr. Mann, Councillor Mann, in the sense that if we try and approve this every year like we're doing now, and I understand it's relatively new to the city, and it's pioneered on Queen Street a couple of years ago, then in the golf course as well. And I don't think it's fair to the businesses because as a matter of fact, I got an email today about it. I don't think it's fair for the businesses to be waiting bated breath whether the street's going to be closed or not. And I think it's critical to the community or sense of community that we look at this on a rolling forward basis. Now, the other question I would have through the mayor and through Mr. Goodrum, I'm assuming once we pass this, then that's everything's said and done, and then we'll get the road closures and everything else that would be required, Mr. Goodrum?
Through the mayor, that's correct. Once this is passed tonight, staff have our direction to implement the road closures, as well as facilitate any patio expansions on private property as well as public property for the 2020 patio season.
Thank you very much.
2022, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. It's kind of nice to look forward to this season coming up. Again, cycling, patios, springtime, it's all good. Councillor Wolf, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I actually had two emails today from constituents. One asked if we could encourage restaurants to stay open on Mondays that are in that section because they really felt it. If we're keeping the road closed for 7 days, it would be nice if we could encourage the businesses to stay open for the 7 days. So that's one. I'm not sure if that's something council can do or you can do, James. And the other was from another constituent who said he hopes we pass this motion because he's already told two companies that are committed to investing in the main street that we were closed. So he said, don't make a liar out of him. So anyway, I think it shows how important it is. So I would be also in favor of making it a permanent situation so that people understand that this is what's going to happen in the downtown core. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. And I'm glad that Councillor Mann brought this up, and also Councillor Wolf. I think I received some of the same emails. And I think it is very important because there's strength in the consistency, right? Businesses like consistency, tourists will like consistency. Waiting with bated breath whether or not you can roll out patios. It's quite a large endeavor when you think about the size of that street in terms of tables, chairs, umbrellas, storage, staff, the means to get out there, the accessibility as well of those curbs on some of the streets we have. It's important to think ahead and to create the infrastructure that can actually stand the test of time, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I think that's essential. I would like to maybe add to that direction to staff. It's not an amendment, it's not necessary, to even look at the possibility of what would happen if the street were closed in the winter. A lot of those businesses have also reached out to me saying, well, why is it not only on a rolling basis, but what about all year round? If our cores are going to have a lot more people living in them, if you were to close some of these streets throughout the whole year, you can actually get booths lining the middle of the street. You can have designated zones for buskers. And the winter might seem like a dire time to have a closed street, but that's where you can get things like ice sculptures. You can have those closed booths. You can have patios that actually have surroundings or heaters or even plastic covering. So it's like a kind of a pseudo indoor setting. So staff could look at that as well. So I think that the more that our cores become centers of destination in a growing area, the more that probability pops up, the possibility pops up. It's actually, I think, feasible. We talk about our cores having a European feel. That's exactly what they do. Streets like this, there are no cars. They're blocked off all year round, and businesses thrives, booths thrives, buskers thrive. So I can see that happening if we create the conditions to allow it to grow. So I don't know if staff can add the potential in that report of what would it look like year round in the winter as well. I'm
going to just weigh in there, Councillor Hamilton, and pass, put the motion out there and vote on that in a few minutes. I'm just going to say that perhaps that staff direction or this kind of chat would be better coming forward at the end of the season when we're doing the wrap up and sort of looking at future directions and sort of making this potentially more permanent. Okay.
If I could add through the mayor, I think that's definitely something that we can look at. One of the things we're doing this year is the program's being somewhat expanded. The BIA is pitching in for pop-up patios, which is kind of portable patio sets for the area and those sorts of things. Garbage collection last year, we had a bit of an issue with. Our ambassador team did a fantastic job. There were a couple issues, so we're fine-tuning things this year, I'd say. And I think when we come back with the wrap-up report, we'll have an eye towards making this permanent every year with information related to that. We'll have a good sense of what the budget and financial implications are. And yeah, we could definitely take this as direction to look at perhaps a year-round closure as well. I'm really not sure what the implications of that are, but we'd have to obviously vet that with our colleagues across the city and that, including fire and those emergency EMS and that.
Thank you. I'll move forward to Councillor Reid. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I just want to make a comment on how successful it certainly was in the Hesper Village area. And I'm sure from what I've heard, it was just as successful in downtown Cambridge. And so people really enjoyed that. And, you know, COVID has taught us a lot. And this is one of the things that it has taught us, is that people do enjoy having an outdoor area where they can sit and have some substance and drinks and food, and they do enjoy it where they don't need to worry about dodging cars and trying to cross streets and that. So I think it has been proven to be very successful, and I really am pleased that we have this motion that we can support here today.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett, it's your turn. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment about owner-operated businesses. One of the reasons that they close on Mondays is because it's the least active day of the week, and most of the times they're the ones who are running the show, and they need a day off. They need to do their banking. They need to just get their energy back up. So that's usually one of those reasons. But hopefully, as they become more successful, if we open up the downtown every year, they can make more money and be able to hire more staff. So it's a good go around for everybody. I'd rather see this, oh, and by the way, we all got the same email, so we're singing off the same page here. I would rather see this come to council sooner rather than later, and my reason being is that you have to plan in advance for things. You have to put aside the money or borrow the money. You have to purchase what you need in order to operate that sort of a facility where you work on an open streetscape, because you need the tables, you need the chairs, you need the umbrellas, you need to do all of the marketing for it. And as the email had said today, that particular landlord thought that we had already passed this. So the reason the one client is coming in is because it was believed a year, like last year, that we were going to be doing it this year, when in reality we hadn't even done that until tonight. So in order for landlords to be able to rent to people, they need to know well in advance this is happening. And I think the fall, when we do a wrap up, is way too late. So I'd rather see something like this, a report come to us as to the feasibility of doing something like this on an annual basis. That part be done sooner, and then the wrap up to be done at a different time.
Through the mayor, yes, we can definitely take a look at scheduling that sooner, and definitely with an eye towards incorporating it as part of the budget process as well, in terms of funding it going forward. Fortunately, I didn't receive the email message that I think a lot of people received today, so I'm not entirely sure of the content of it, but would be glad to review it.
Through you, Madam Chair, Mr. Goodrum, it was somebody you would expect it to have come from, and it was actually for 2 restaurants, big name restaurants coming in downtown. So,
oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you'll know who it is. Yeah, okay.
I think you're hearing a lot of support for this. We're all looking forward to it. Councillor Ermetta, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. This motion has my full support. I thought the report was excellent, and as a member of the Downtown Cambridge Golf BIA, they're ecstatic about this. There's a huge amount of support. It's been a resounding success, and they want to build on that success. And what this does is it helps create a destination to bring in people from all over, and to support our businesses during all times of the year. And people just love the outdoors. They just love being outdoors. And as Councillor Reid mentioned, you don't want to be dodging vehicles, and not only that, you don't want the sound of vehicles going by either if you can, right? It's nice to have a nice, peaceful European atmosphere with a great sense of culture and a great sense of place. So it's got my full support. I thought Councillor Hamilton raised a great point about making it year round and looking at things such as ice sculptures and warming lamps and that. I mean, I myself, I'm outside all year, you know, hiking and doing this and that, but I know that for an environment like that, we would need the heating lamps and stuff. I think it'd be great to look at options, and I know that there is a process, there has to be a plan and a way to implement it. And as it's been mentioned as well, consistency is important and the whole marketing aspect behind that. So I think this is exciting and that we're on the right track. Well done.
Thank you. And I just had one quick question to Mr. Goodrum. It was really about the date of the closure too. I was wondering if all of the businesses along there were supportive of it sort of continuing straight through to October.
Well, through the mayor. Yes, definitely. We have resolutions from both BIAs who have consulted with their members and the businesses within those areas. So there is a lot of support for that. And in fact, one of the things that I found most interesting is with the patio expansion last year in that additional area, one of the restaurants had one of their best years financially ever. And in spite of the pandemic, having the ability to have that additional seating area outside was a definite revenue generator for them, and I think really created to that sense of place and vitality of the lower Main Street corridor. So yeah, definitely it's been positive, and there seems to be a lot of support from the businesses directly affected for it to continue.
I would say too that from what I'm hearing here, there's full consensus amongst council table that we'd like to see this go forward, and we'll wait to get a full report. And I just wanted to end off with one comment from another couple of businesses along Ainsley Street that said that they noticed that the traffic in their stores that weren't restaurants was certainly up while they had the pedestrian traffic to and from the restaurants. And I think it's been really good economically for them as well, especially during, as you said, the pandemic times. So that'll be one good silver lining that likely comes out of the last couple of years. And I think we're all looking forward to that. So seeing no further comments, I'm going to call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshape.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
All right.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have item 9.2.2, Report 22-006 CRE Core Areas Financial Incentives, March 2022 applications. Councillor Hamilton, you have this motion. Will you please read it?
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Mann. The recommendation that report 22-006 CRE regarding core areas financial incentives, March 2022 applications be received, and that Council approve the 4 core area financial incentive program applications as outlined in report 22-006 CRE, and authorize the accompanying transfer of funds from the Core Areas Transformation Fund, CATF, totaling $160,243, and that staff be authorized to execute a commitment letter and any required documentation in order to administer this funding, and that Council delegate authority to Director of Economic Development and Chief Financial Officer or designates to increase the funding to the maximum amount within the parameters of the specific programs if necessary. And further, that the work approved under these enhanced incentives be completed within 1 year of the date on the approval letters.
Thank you. So I'll now see if there's any questions for staff. And seeing none, are there any comments? And seeing none, we're ready to call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshade. Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor Adshade?
I in favor.
Councillor Devine. And Councillor Devine has stepped away. Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, we have item number 9.3.1, Report 22-013-CD, Recommendation Report, Official Plan Amendment, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, and Removal of a Holding Zone, IP Park Phase 1 Intermarket CAM Limited. And this evening we do have Kathy Paget with us, our Senior Planner, Environment, to, I think, present this evening. And the applicant, Mark Kinderchuk, President of Intermarket Group, available for questions. So we'll just make sure that they're in the meeting. And Mark Kinderchuk will be available for questions after. So Kathy, welcome, and you can ask our clerk to move the slides forward for you when you're ready. And please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have my camera turned on, but it is not showing me, so I am here.
Okay, I hear you.
Okay.
And it sounds like you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Council, senior staff, and members of the public. This is a recommendation report for the IP Park Phase 1 Official Plan Amendment, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, and Removal of a Holding Zone. Next slide, please. Thank you. The purpose of this meeting is to bring forward a recommendation for the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments and removal of a holding zone. A statutory public meeting was held July 27th, 2021. A subsequent meeting was held on November 23rd due to changes to the original proposal and to incorporate public feedback received from the initial public meeting. This report is now at the recommendation stage. Next slide, please. The subject lands are currently vacant and are located on Boychuk Drive, which is located south Vallendale Road and Riverbank Drive, west of Maple Grove Road, and north of the railway corridor and Highway 8. Next slide, please. There are 3 components to this application. The first component is specific to the parcels in Phase 1A labeled 145, 155, and 185 Boychuk Drive, south of Boychuk Drive, and identified by the red star on the map. The applicant is proposing outdoor storage be permitted. The lands are designated employment corridor, and an official plan amendment is being sought to permit outdoor storage. A zoning bylaw amendment is also being sought to permit outdoor storage with the following provisions. Outdoor storage be located behind the regulatory building line. Outdoor storage be screened from view along the western property line by one or any combination of a solid fence, wall, or earth berm 2.4 meters in height. Outdoor storage shall not be located within 40 meters of the western property line, and the height of outdoor storage is not to exceed 3.5 meters. Next slide, please. This map is from the visual impact analysis provided by the applicant in support of their proposal. 5 viewpoints were analyzed, including from Highway 8, King Street East, and Maple Grove Road. It was concluded that there are minimal to no visual impacts anticipated from the proposed outdoor storage due to existing grades, existing buildings, and existing environmental features. The applicant is requesting a maximum height of 3.5 meters for outdoor storage. As noted previously, outdoor storage will be screened from the properties to the west by a 2.4 meter high solid fence, wall, or earth berm, which is the maximum height permitted behind the building line in industrial zones as per the city's fence bylaw. Outdoor storage will also not be permitted within 40 meters of the western property line to provide an additional setback. The screening and setback for where outdoor storage is permitted is anticipated to provide a minimal line of sight over the fence from adjacent properties to the west. The visual impact of outdoor storage from Highway 8 is anticipated to be negligible, while also considering that these properties abut the CP shunting yard in which rail cars are stored, which are approximately 3.5 meters in height. Next slide, please. The second component to this application is with respect to the maximum gross floor areas, or GFAs, that currently apply to the Phase 1A lands stated in red on the figure. The original purpose of the maximum GFAs in the approved site-specific zoning was to limit development at the time of the original approval, when it was expected that Boychuk Drive was to be a dead-end road and the lands would be serviced by one municipal road and would have limited traffic capacity to support development. Intermarket Road has since been constructed from Allendale Road to Boychuk Drive, and Boychuk Drive has since been constructed from Intermarket Road to Maple Grove Road, providing for two municipal accesses. A zoning bylaw amendment is being sought to remove the maximum GFAs now that there are two municipal accesses being provided and additional development can be supported. Next slide, please. The third component to this application requests to remove the H1 holding zone on the Phase 1B lands identified in green on the figure. The H1 holding zone limits all development conditional on the applicant constructing a second municipal public-owned right-of-way constructed to full municipal standards and connected to the collector road network. As mentioned on the previous slide, Intermarket Road has been constructed from Allendale Road to Boychuk Drive, and Boychuk Drive has been constructed from Intermarket Road to Maple Grove Road, providing for two municipal accesses. Next slide, please. While the applicant has applied to remove the H1 holding zone from both parcels to which it applies in Phase 1B, staff support the removal of the H1 holding zone only from the eastern parcel in Phase 1B that has frontage on Intermarket Road at Boychuk Drive, identified by the red star. The western parcel in Phase 1B currently does not have access to a constructed municipal road. However, when the extension of Boychuk Drive to King Street East is completed, and the western parcel has frontage on a constructed municipal road, staff would support the removal of the H1 holding zone at that time. Next slide, please. The following considerations were evaluated in the recommendation report: visual impacts of the proposed outdoor storage, appropriateness of the proposed changes to the zoning regulations, and input from the public, council, and staff and agency review. Next slide, please. The recommendation being made today is for council to receive the report, for council to adopt official plan amendment number 50 to permit outdoor storage on 145, 155, and 185 Boychuk Drive, for council to approve the zoning bylaw amendment to permit outdoor storage with site-specific provisions on 145, 155, and 185 Boychuk Drive, and to remove the maximum gross floor areas from Phase 1A, for council to remove the H1 holding zone from the eastern parcel in Phase 1B, the council is satisfied a subsequent public meeting is not required, and that the bylaws be passed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for your presentation. So, council members, I think since we have the proponent, Mark Kinderchuk, with us, I'm just going to see if there's any questions for him specifically, and then we'll move to put the motion on the floor and then questions of our staff. Councillor Devine, do you have a question for Mr. Kinderchuk? Please go ahead.
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Kinderchuk. Would there be any, with the outdoor storage, would there be any noise pollution involved here, like the banging of metal or lift trucks banging? Do you anticipate any of that at all, Mark?
I don't think so. There's, as you know, this is already an active shunting yard with Toyota. So there is tremendous amounts of noise there already. I don't believe we'll be adding any substantial noise to that existing, which has been in place for, I think, 20 years already.
Okay, so you don't think the noise would exceed that?
Nope. I think actually it's far enough from other places, and there's the traffic from Highway 8, which provides background noise. There is considerable noise from the existing shunting operations from Toyota. The operation of an industrial building highly unlikely will exceed any of that.
Okay, Mr. Kinderchuk, I'm assuming, and I just have to make some assumptions here now, you correct me if I'm wrong, that these manufacturing operations could quite likely operate 24 hours a day. Would that be correct?
No, I don't think so. A lot of people, they don't operate 24 hours a day.
There's a
Buildings
lot
of
to
this
do.
size usually operate during business hours, 7 till 7, pardon me?
I say there's a lot to do to work 24 hours a day if they're manufacturing, sir.
Well, the people that we're talking to and the uses, I'm not sure if it'll be 24/7. I find it unlikely it'll be 24/7.
Okay, I'm just worried about noise through the night, that's all, because it'll carry. Thank you.
Well, okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mr. Kinderchuk, and you can continue to follow along in the City of Cambridge YouTube channel if you so wish for the rest of this item. And thanks again for coming in tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Reid, you have the motion. Would you like the clerk to read it?
Yes, please.
Yep, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Mann. Recommendation that Cambridge Council receive report number 22013 CD and that Cambridge Council adopts official plan amendment number 50 with a site-specific policy to permit outdoor storage on a portion of the subject land's designated employment corridor. And the Cambridge Council approves the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to amend the site-specific zoning to permit outdoor storage behind the established building line and to remove the maximum gross floor areas on a portion of the subject lands. And the Cambridge Council remove the H1 holding zone preceding the M1S4146 zone category, and that Cambridge Council is satisfied that a subsequent public meeting in accordance with subsection 3417 of the Planning Act is not required. And further, that the bylaws attached to number report 22013 be passed.
May I speak to the motion, please?
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Through you to council. This, of course, is in my ward, Ward 1, and we had 2 public meetings around this, you know, as changes occurred within that area. And the main concern that people had was the outdoor storage. And I think that what we have done with the outdoor storage has been to the advantage of everyone, and that with a berm or a wall or whatever comes up there, so the people to the west that were mainly concerned with the outdoor storage will not see it and will not hear it, and it won't have an impact on their particular properties. So I feel that we have made some moves that would allow us then to support this motion, and I'm encouraging everyone to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to questions next. Councillor Mann, go ahead. You have the floor.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm ahead of myself. I had a comment only. Thank you.
Well, hang in there for a moment. I'll see if there's any further questions. Seeing none, we'll move to comments. Councillor Mann, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a comment, and I too support this motion. It's been in the works for a long time, and a lot of work has been done with the developer and with staff. And I think the outcome and the results that we have before us tonight are very good. And like I say, I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshade.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Aye.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. We're now going to go for a 10-minute bio break. I've been requested by council to break at this point, so you may turn your cameras and your mics off, and I'll see you in 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for your patience. Our next agenda item is number 9.3.2, Report 22-021-CD, Black Bridge Emergency Repairs. This report was previously brought to us on our February 15th agenda and moved to this evening. Councillor Reid, you have the motion. Would you like the clerk to read it?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Devine. Recommendation that report 22-021 CD Black Bridge emergency repairs be received, and that additional budget in the amount of $130,000 in 2022 be approved for the repair of Black Bridge, and further that a transfer of funding from the rate stabilization reserve be approved to cover any excess expenditures in 2022 not recuperated from the driver responsible.
May I speak to the motion?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I think that this motion needs to pass. We need to ensure that that bridge is taken care of. It's a very historical bridge. It is a designated bridge, and it's something that we never want to lose. So I'm hoping that everyone will approve this, and hopefully we will get the money back from the truck and the company, whoever damaged the bridge in the first place. And so I am hopeful that everybody will support this. Again, this is in Ward 1.
Thank you. And we'll now move to any questions for staff. Councillor Devine, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That's Councillor Reid's right. It's part of it's in Ward 1, the other part's in Ward 2. As Councillor Reid has said, that's historic bridge, and it needs to be repaired. All right, but the concern that I have reading the report, and the report, by the way, Mr. Dooleyback, is well done. Any of the questions I had previously have been answered. But the one question I do have is, do we still feel it's safe to be driving over that bridge prior to the repairs being done?
Mr. Dooleyback, go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Devine, we did retain the services of a structural bridge engineer to review the bridge at the time or the next day after the impact had occurred, and they have deemed that the bridge is safe to be reopened, that it is only within a high wind event that we would consider closing it again, just as a precaution for safety.
Okay, that's fine. So how do we monitor the high wind event? How do we monitor that at City?
The high wind event is basically, sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Devine, my apologies, is a 1 in 10 year wind event equivalent to 85 km/h gusts. Through our regular monitoring of the forecasts, that's how we would be able to capture that type of, and there would likely be a special weather statement for that type of wind event.
Can I have a follow-up through the mayor?
Go ahead.
Okay, now do we have somebody on staff that's actually monitoring that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Devine, yes, as part of our obligations under the minimum maintenance standards, we are obligated to monitor our forecasts. So that's how we are able to do that on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Liggett, you're next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wasn't this deferred so that staff could find out whether our insurance covered it rather than this come out of other accounts if the person who did the damage didn't have enough insurance? Isn't that what this, wasn't that this one?
I'm just going to look to staff. Go ahead, Mr. Liebert.
Through the mayor to Councillor Liggett, yes, there were questions of council regarding the aspects of insurance coverage, which we have added to the financial impact section of the report to help clarify those questions.
Okay, sorry, I don't have that. I've misplaced my agenda. Could you just, I did read the agenda and went through it. I just don't have it with me. Could you please just talk a bit about that, on what that was?
Yes, certainly. Through the mayor to Councillor Liggett, essentially the insurance coverage available for this type of bridge isn't necessarily covered underneath the city's insurance policy. And so through the claim recovery process, claims of this nature are sometimes subject to depreciation and betterment. And so that is why there may not be a full cost recovery of the repairs to the damage that was incurred.
Okay, through you, Madam, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would also look to our risk management officer, Olu, if he would care to expand upon that response.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Your Worship, bridges of this nature, infrastructure of this nature are not insured under the city's policy. However, we are looking to pursue the at-fault driver for the full extent of the damages. So that's the action that we're going to take. It's just a bridge that's not generally covered under the insurance policy. Infrastructure of these sizes are kind of like some of our other linear infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Olu. So I would, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So I would imagine that this is the amounts being transferred back and forth is just in case of. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you. And
Okay.
through Your Worship, yes, you are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, are there any further comments? And seeing none, we're going to call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Adshape,
In favor?
Councillor Devine,
Aye.
Councillor Mehta,
In favor?
Councillor Hamilton,
In favor.
Councillor Liggett,
In favor?
Councillor Mann,
In favor?
Councillor Reid,
In favor?
Councillor Wolf,
In favor?
Mayor McGarry,
In favor.
and that carries.
Thank you. That concludes our regular agenda for this evening. So we'll go now to other business. Does any member of council have other business for discussion? Councillor Wolf, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, two things. One, just to remind everybody that Tuesday, March 8th is International Women's Day. And this weekend and on March 8th, there's many events happening. We have CFUW has a speaker. The Seroptimists also have an event and speaker. Labor Council does as well. And the Change the Flow, along with the Red Dot Group and Red Dot Project and A Day for Girls Canada are presenting menstrual equity in menstrual health video event. So make sure everyone on March 8th tries to see one of these events to celebrate International Women's Day. And also, I would like the residents in my ward to know that I will be supporting the North Dumfries motion for a 2-year moratorium for any new gravel pits applications or expansions in Ontario. And that will be coming March 22nd once we examine the motion in detail.
Thank you. That's a busy lineup for International Women's Day.
Yes.
Lots going on. I'll move next to Councillor Mehta. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Just an update for the residents of my ward and other residents who may drive by the area about the traffic signal at Saginaw Town Line. They're hoping to have it up and running hopefully by March the 2nd. There's been some delays with the electrical hookup, but they are on their way. So fingers crossed, that's the date we're hoping for. The region provided me that update and just wanted to pass it along. And also it was Madam Clerk's birthday recently. I just wanted to wish a happy birthday, and I'm sure we all do too.
Thank you. And it is good safety to see that light finally get operational. So thanks for that update. Councillor Reid, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Wolf upstaged me on the International Women's Day, but I just want to remind you that the city is involved with the Seroptimus on Saturday on Break the Bias and on with the Canadian Federation of University Women on the Monday breakfast, and in that we are supporting that. And so I'm hopeful that all of you would come out to that and enjoy the Break the Bias with the rest of us. The other announcement I wanted to make was around the Waterloo Region Women's Municipal Campaign School, which is the first day is the Y, and we're encouraging all women who are interested or think they might be interested to come out to the first day of this school on Sunday, March the 6th, and to find out what is the why should you run. I'm really hoping that we will have some BIPOC women who will come out. I would like to see our councils become a little more diverse than they currently are. And so I'm encouraging all of those women to please come out. The second day is the how. Once you've decided that you want to run and you want to know how you can run and how you can win, that will be on April the 30th. And again, the Cambridge Celebration of Women is supporting this event as well. So I'm hoping that a number of women within the community will become a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say that all of the International Women's Day events are virtual still.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. We'll next move on to motions. Councillor Liggett provided notice of motion for her motion. Let me try that again. Sorry. Councillor Liggett provided notice for her motion on February 1st at the special council meeting, and then it was deferred because we were quite late last time. So now I am ready for Councillor Liggett to place her motion on the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying not to sneeze in the middle of this. Sorry. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Armetta, the Ontario Land Tribunal dissolution motion. Whereas municipalities across this province collectively spend millions of dollars of taxpayer money and municipal resources developing official plans that meet current provincial planning policy, and whereas an official plan is developed through months of public consultation to ensure that future planning and development will meet the specific needs of our community, and whereas our official plan includes zoning provisions that encourage development of the missing middle or gentle density to meet the need for attainable housing on our community, and whereas our official plan is ultimately approved by the province, and whereas it is within the legislative purview of municipal council to approve official plan amendments or zoning bylaw changes that better the community or fit within the vision of the City of Cambridge official plan. And whereas it is also within the legislative purview of municipal council to deny official plan amendments or zoning bylaw changes that do not better the community or do not fit within the vision of the City of Cambridge official plan. And whereas municipal planning decisions may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, formerly the Ontario Municipal Board, or OMB, an unelected appointed body that is not accountable to the residents of the City of Cambridge, and whereas the OLT has the authority to make a final decision on planning matters based on a best planning outcome and not whether the proposed development is in the compliance with the municipal official plans and provincial planning policy. And whereas all decisions save planning decisions made by municipal council are only subject to appeal by judicial review, and such appeals are limited to questions of law and or process. And whereas Ontario is the only province in Canada that empowers a separate adjudicative tribunal to review and overrule local decisions applying provincially approved plans, and whereas towns and cities across this province are repeatedly forced to spend millions of dollars defending official plans that have already been approved by the province in expensive, time-consuming, and ultimately futile OLT hearings, and whereas lengthy, costly OLT hearings act as a barrier to the development of attainable housing. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Cambridge requests the Government of Ontario to dissolve the OLT immediately, thereby eliminating one of the most significant sources of red tape delaying the development of more attainable housing in Ontario. And be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be sent to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Leader of the Opposition, the leaders of the Liberal and Green Party, all MPPs in the province of Ontario, the large urban mayors caucus of Ontario, the small urban mayor GTHA mayors and regional chairs of Ontario, and be it further resolved that a copy of this motion be sent to the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, and all Ontario municipalities for their consideration. And I'd like to speak to it, please.
Yep, go ahead, please.
Okay, sorry, guys, that was long-winded, but I'm going to be even more long-winded here. So if you would just bear with me, please. 6 years ago, this coming May, an OMB Reform Summit was held in Aurora. Over 100 of us as elected officials, including Councillor Reid, came together in a grassroots gathering from concerns for the growth of our communities through our planning systems. Out of that summit, a consensus was formed, culminating in a recommendation to the province that the jurisdiction of the OMB should be limited to questions of law or process, specifically when considering appeals, require the OMB to uphold any planning decisions of municipal councillors unless said decision is contrary to the processes and rules set out in legislation. Well, LPAT was birthed from that moment, and it came into being the following year in 2017. Who would have ever thought at that time that after those past hard learned lessons that we would have regressed to something worse than what the OMB was, where we would lose even more of our autonomy as municipalities to make planning decisions in the best interest of our respective communities. The OLT successor to the OLT, which was the successor to the OMB, was brought in to streamline 5 different boards and tribunals, including the new LPAT in June of just last year. It was responsible for managing conflicts that were to arise during land use planning, as shown in the statement made at the time. The OLT and all who work within it are committed to providing access to justice and to high quality, independent, timely, fair, and principled resolutions of the matters brought before them. It has now shown itself to be quite the opposite, in fact, profoundly so pro-development that it now requires total dissolution. As Dr. Mark Winfield from York University has stated, it is repeatedly overriding specific local community development plans in favor of development interests. According to a provincial statement February 8th, which we've all been reading about and hearing about and talking about, the Ontario Housing Task Force recommendations include 5 main areas to meet a goal of adding 1.5 million homes over the next 10 years. Of great concern is the one specifically referring to the OLT. Prevent abuse of the appeal process and address the backlog at the Ontario Land Tribunal by prioritizing cases that increase housing. So we have to ask ourselves, what exactly does that mean? We have a choice. We wait and see, or we can be proactive. Note that this bullet point of the statement did not note, it did not say affordable, attainable, supportive, affordable, attainable, supportive housing. This will add to the red tape rather than streamline the process. Let us do our jobs in upholding our provincially approved official plans, giving the understanding to developers that they can get shovels in the ground much faster by working with those and those we represent, rather than having a complete disregard for the community in which they choose to build. This report effectively will leave us on the outside looking in. In fact, what we have coming before us more and more in Waterloo Region are the kinds of proposals which make developers very happy, but do little to solve the housing crisis or wider problems related to development patterns in the region, such as transportation or environmental. The system we have currently allows a developer to appeal to the OLT without taking the time to work with residents and councils to achieve a development that works with the community. It makes a mockery of years of work and money spent by municipalities to create their official plans that are written for the essence of the planning for a community and which are then followed with approval by the province itself. When plans come before us, developers have consistently said they have no intention of providing affordable housing. I mean, why would they when it doesn't make business sense? They'll just file at the OLT if we don't approve their plans. With the actions of today's OLT, councils may as well not have planning meetings where we make decisions. And developers can smell this. They really can smell this. One of the most significant things to grasp is that the OLT is an unelected, unaccountable to the people body. A body that allows for decisions to go straight to appeal without the possibility of compromise. And delegation to council of the people wanting us to make informed decisions regarding changes to their community. Well, you can just kiss those ones goodbye, because that's what's happening currently. The OLT doesn't care. If they don't care what a council decides, they sure as heck don't care what the people think. This motion is our first step in joining hands with the other Ontario municipalities and fighting for reform of legislation, which is supposedly part of our judicial system as a quasi-judicial body. This same motion is being brought before all of the other 443 municipalities as our unified voice to join with each other and to be heard as one. We are now over 70 communities who have tabled the motion, with 70 plus York Region passing it so far. And that number continues to grow daily. And as I had said in the motion, Ontario is the only province which has a body in place to override local decisions. No other province has such a body. We as a council should be the ones that allow for the flexibility of our official plan, not an unelected, unaccountable third party body who knows nothing of our community. A body where the adjudicator's decision is final and cannot be appealed, that doesn't answer to the people, that can't be voted out. We will never solve the housing crisis, which is rampant across the province, through decisions of this unaccountable body. We need to remove those barriers and red tape. And as I've said, the way to do this is by removing the OLT appeals process barrier. We are meeting the province's requirements that they have placed in front of us for intensity. Our official plan meets growth and intensification targets, as well as allowing for diverse housing options. We aren't the obstacle. The bottom lines of developers are. Constantly, we find ourselves pitted against applicants and those bottom lines when appeals are filed, because we didn't approve what isn't allowed. Yet what we do allow does meet our targets and conforms to our official plan. Again, what we don't allow doesn't. Maximizing profit should never come before a municipality's plan created through its official plan and bylaws. Strange dichotomy, isn't it, when we as a community are mandated to follow our OP, but the appeals process allows for applicants to ignore it entirely. We should be allowed the authority to fulfill the vision of our community, and we should also have the final say to grant or deny an application that doesn't share that vision. Do we try to affect the same kind of change as previous councils did across the province in 2017? A change which occurred under the previous provincial government, or do we just keep agreeing to allow the OLT and its unelected, unaccountable, appointed third party to corrupt our community vision through profit-driven planning, which will never create the housing that we need here? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move forward next to Councillor Mehta, followed by Councillor Mann. Go ahead, Councillor Mehta.
Well, thank you very much, Your Worship. I think this motion, it's got my full support. It's very comprehensive. I believe it covers all the points and the reasons for them. And I thank Councillor Liggett for sharing all that. A lot of what she was saying, I agree with. It's what I'm thinking. And I was on the original committee regarding the Ontario Municipal Board Reform. I had the honor of serving on that committee, and I still communicate with the residents, or I should say the other elected officials, quite regularly. And we are concerned about what's happening. We're concerned about the decreasing local autonomy and how we're having less of a say about what happens in our communities. And I know around the table we do our best. And what this is, this would give us a tool to have a much greater say, to be able to chart the destiny of the community. You know, when when this group had first met, myself included, you know, we're concerned about every community becoming the same. We're concerned about all the money we spend on official plan reviews and putting that vision together and hearing from the residents and then how it just gets overturned. Like, we're concerned about that. And, we agree there's a housing crisis and there's a better way to address it. And by providing that consistency, by providing, standards that developers know ahead of time, and sticking to them, the standards that respect the community, but they also provide the investment community an opportunity to know what the community expects when they come into it. And that's in the public interest. It's in the community's interest. It respects the vision of the character of the city, and it really builds on that character. And, I look at this as an opportunity to strengthen local democracy. And really, the local citizens and our local staff and our local elected officials, we know best. And it shouldn't be some decision made in Toronto or wherever else in the province. I think that these decisions need to be made locally, and there's ample time in the planning process to be able to come up with something that works for the community. And what it comes down to is every community is unique. Do we all want to look the same? I don't want that. Our citizens don't want that. So this motion has my full support, and thank you.
Thank you. We'll go forward with Councillor Mann and then followed by Councillor Hamilton. Go ahead, Councillor Mann.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Liggett, for bringing forward this motion. There's all kinds of information in here, and there's a lot to digest. And then your commentary following the motion is also significant, and lots to consider. My question is of staff. I have my own thoughts about this, but I would like to know what staff feel. And I don't know if it's fair to put staff on the pin tonight to say, what do you think about this and what should we be doing? Because the information that has been shared is significant. And if I'm going to make a decision on this, I need more information, I think, than what's been presented. And so I want to ask staff if they're able to provide commentary on it, and if that would be something that they could provide at another meeting, and that this would be deferred until that meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. I'm going to go to David Calder. I know that David has been part of the Big City Mayor's discussion on this, as well as the Housing Summit, where we met with the Premier and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So I'm going to have him weigh in. Mr. Calder.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McGarry, and through you to Council. I do want to recognize Lisa Prime and her team as well, who have provided information to a number of these bodies that are looking for information. We haven't taken a position as staff. What we have done, though, is provided information to the Ontario Big City Mayors, who did a survey. We've provided information over the past to AMO. And I did want to say AMO released their response to the recommendations of the Housing Affordability Task Force at 4 o'clock today. So we haven't even had a chance to really take a look at those. I did quickly scan through to see what there was related to the OLT, because I knew it was coming up tonight, and Councillor Leggett had a reference to AMO in that resolution about sending this to them. But they seem to be taking the position right now that they want to take some more time and work through to see what the impacts of the recommendations of the task force are, which may be a little less or narrower scope than some of the issues that Councillor Leggett raised in her presentation this evening. I also want to say, as I mentioned, the Ontario Big City Mayors, which are 29 of the largest cities and areas in Ontario, did a survey of all the municipalities. There was also some input, I believe, from the regional chairs who haven't necessarily taken a position yet either. But the Ontario Big City Mayors were sort of the opinion that, rather than removing the right to appeal planning matters, appeal should be based on legitimate grounds and expeditiously resolved. So they're a little concerned about taking away appeal rights, and it's not necessarily just the developers. There's also neighborhood groups and citizens that also can appeal things to the OLT. So I don't think they want to be too quick to, take away that opportunity through this process. They also felt that the OLT process needed to be simplified. And I think to Councillor Leggett's point, it has become a forum of solicitors and developers and planning experts. And I think what the big city mayors would like to see is some focus on how to narrow the scope of what gets appealed to the OLT. And sorry, and I can say specifically too, there's been some commentary around, maybe developments that have an affordable housing content or a supportive housing content wouldn't be appealable, or only certain parts of it could be appealed. So they are trying to find ways to shorten up the timelines in order to get affordable housing online. They also felt that, as we know, you go to the OLT and then you wait for a decision. They are recommending that the OLT should be looking at providing oral decisions, and immediately or soon thereafter of a hearing, rather than trying to craft written decisions. That way, developers or residents or those that are providing affordable housing can get shovels in the ground quicker. So that was just another area. And Councillor Leggett also mentioned too this, through prioritization. Right now, the OLT has quite a backlog, and the first thing people think of is, okay, let's throw more money and more staff at it. But I think really before we do that, we should look at some other things to streamline the process and cut down on red tape. And one of the things was, okay, let's look at what are the outstanding cases. Is there a way to clear those up quickly? Are some almost close to, the finish line, as they say? So they felt there should be some work done on that, rather than just taking money and hiring more staff. That could be a short-term solution to get through the backlog, but it certainly isn't the long-term. You may know too, in the housing task force report, they wanted to raise fees for applications to the OLT. So you and I would pay $400, whereas I think I might be wrong, it's around 125 or something right now. But third parties would pay 10,000. And really, how that's being viewed is that's just a punitive cost, to try and make sure people or try to deter people from appealing. But really, the issue is, what is a fair fee? And it should apply to all, I think, is really what some of the issues are around that. And then I think one of the things about the raising of fees that have come up with some other sort of support groups in our communities is that just adds more of a financial barrier and exacerbates the economic inequalities in our society. So that's where they think, we really have to take a close look at fees before you just increase them. The other one that has come up a little bit is, and Councillor Leggett, you may recall this, that the Planning Appeal Support Center was in existence, and the government deleted it in 2019. And that was a tool that sort of helped educate people about the planning process, help them navigate through the system. And I think the intent then was, to try and speed up some of the hearings by having people be knowledgeable, being able to scope down what the appeal is, if that was available. So again, that was a tool that was in place and isn't here any longer. And some think, well, maybe we should take a look at that again. And there is a whole piece around educating the public about the planning process, because we know, the NIMBYism is another concern. And how do we talk to our communities about higher densities and those sorts of things, because that is a change for our community. So I just wanted to say really that there's some work still being done on the OLT. And I just wanted to, say that I'm not sure if this recommendation is being approved by the various municipalities that Councillor Leggett talked about, but I worry it might be premature, and that there might be other options to look at than just outright taking away the appeal process. But that's a decision you'll have to make. But I really just wanted to say that since Councillor Leggett moved this or brought this resolution forward on February 1st, there's been a lot of activity as recently as, the 24th, I think, the Ontario Big City Mayors met they're still compiling their report to the province. And as I said, AMO just got theirs in today. So there's still a lot of moving parts to this, I think, in terms of input from the various organizations. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you, Mayor McGarry.
And thank you very much, David. But I'm just going to jump in here and just note too that part of that discussion was that there are times where municipal councils don't actually make decisions that are compliant with their official plans, and dissolving the OLT will not allow for either the property owner or the residents to have an appeal mechanism when those municipal councils do not sort of uphold their own official plan. And seeing we've still got a couple of questions, and then Councillor Mann, I might come back to you. I think you had talked about potentially deferring.
Yes, I did, Madam Mayor, and I'll wait till the questions have been asked.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton, followed by Councillor Liggett. Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. And I thank Councillor Liggett for bringing this motion forward, because I think it is an important conversation, as we're seeing due to the growth in this area of Ontario. I grew up in Tottenham, Ontario, and you drive down Highway 9, 15 minutes to the east, and you get to Newmarket. And I know there's recently controversy over the Glenway Country Club that used to be right across the street from the mall. And I think Newmarket was one of those cities that voted in favor of a similar motion, because I believe they lost that to the OLT. But on the other hand, and this is going to be far less articulate than Mr. Calder phrased it, my first question had to do with the appeals process, because municipalities and residents, I think, technically can appeal to the OLT. So is there anything there to replace that, or are there any discussions to replace that? Because I know we talked about the transition of the LPAT to the OLT. What comes next? What kind of a void opens up, or is there something in place to replace this? If this motion goes through and the province does dissolve it, I guess what remains? Is there anything? Those are the two questions I have, and I'm sorry, they're probably big ones, and I don't know if there are answers to them, but I'm left asking.
I think I'm either going to go back to Mr. Calder on that, to answer that, because go ahead.
So thank you, Mayor McGarry, through you to Councillor Hamilton. So currently the OLT is still in place. There really is no recommendation from the task force to eliminate the OLT. I think what Councillor Liggett is bringing forward is a sentiment from a number of municipalities to suggest perhaps it should be eliminated. And I think, as I heard from Councillor Liggett in her presentation, was that council, you would really be the last decision maker and the final decision maker on items. So there wouldn't be somewhere to appeal, other than, I guess, at some, whether there's a judicial appeal process or right, I don't know, but there certainly wouldn't be a planning body or a quasi judicial body to look at it with this if you eliminated it. And Councillor Liggett, I'll defer to you to explain too, I guess, because it's your resolution.
And with that, it's your hands up next. So please go ahead, Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David, thank you so much for, you were obviously prepared for this evening, and I certainly appreciate everything that you said, and you did it very, very well. Whenever any of these bodies has been dissolved, they've transitioned, they've all been dissolved in one shape or another when they transform into a new body. The OLT clearly isn't working, and it's to the detriment of the communities. And I would imagine that the same thing would happen here. My concern is that with the recommendation of the task force, their report is that we're going to be in a bigger mess than we are currently. I have absolutely no problem of a new body being formed, and the OMB, any of these bodies should be referring to the legal ramifications. If we're not following the law, then obviously somebody should be able to appeal to some sort of a group or some judicial body that will say, no, you haven't followed the law, therefore we don't uphold your decision. And that's what's missing here. Is it's a quasi judicial body. My concern with the delay of this, and I don't know whether to accept the deferral or go forward with the deferral or do an amendment or whatever, is how long would it take before all of these bodies like AMO and the big city mayors and whatever, before they came to some sort of a mutual decision on what should be done? Will all of these other the reforms from this report, they would be in effect? Because we have an election coming up in June, and there's nothing stopping the current government from going forward with these decisions that are very detrimental to, in particular, our housing crisis. So perhaps you could assure me here, David, as to what you think timing would be.
And I will return to Mr. Calder, because I think, as he has outlined, AMO has just put out the response today, but it's not up to us to make the decisions. It's actually up to the provincial government and the provincial minister in order to see what he's going to do with the comments coming back. But I'm going to return to Mr. Calder.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, through you to Councillor Leggett. Yeah, I don't really have a clear grasp either in terms of timing, because what's happened, as you know, is the task force has presented its report to the province. There's 50 plus recommendations in there, so this isn't the only issue to deal with, affordable housing or attainable housing or whatever you want to call it. This was just one part of the process that seemed to come up through the task force. So I think what's happening right now, as I said, the Ontario Big City Mayors have done a survey of their members, and they're just pulling together their report that will eventually get submitted to the province. And I'm thinking they're meeting, I think, monthly. So I suspect there'll be a meeting this month to finalize that report. AMO's, as I said, just came out at 4 o'clock. I haven't even read it, so I'm not even sure whether it's addressing the recommendations or they're asking for more time. But I think what the province has also said is that some of these items may become part of their platform in terms of their election campaign and how they're going to address affordable housing in the province of Ontario. So I think they may, for lack of a better word, cherry pick some of these recommendations and go right out and say, this is what we're supporting. I don't know exactly how they're going to, take the 50 some odd recommendations of the task force and package that up and tell the rest of us what they're doing. So that's the best I can do for you right now. Again, maybe, I don't want to put staff on the spot, but they're, professional associations like the Ontario Planners Association, maybe they're having some input as well. I don't know. But a lot of that stuff was, sort of, I think, solicited during the task force work to some degree, but I'm not sure how thorough exactly that was, because this process was like a 30-day process.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Calder, would you think that a deferral till, what are we in, March here, April, May would be enough time to take a look at what other decisions are being made through AMO, et cetera, so that we have a better idea of where to go with this?
Mayor McGarry, through you to Councillor Leggett, if I could, I think that would be very fair, because I think the other piece that I can tell you the Ontario Big City Mayors are doing is they're waiting to sort of see what the province's platform is, and they're having input on a variety of items. So there will be some more work there. Obviously, AMO would be involved in terms of their advocacy during the election as well. So I think some of these positions may solidify in the next 2 months. So yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
Okay, I'll wait to hear what everybody else has to say. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I think that we'll continue just to discuss this. So Councillor Meta, second time you're speaking, and then we'll go to Councillor Adshade, who hasn't spoken yet.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. It's a great discussion we're having, and so just to provide some an answer to a question in terms of what would happen if it disappears, the OLT. And when we met as a group, there could still potentially be appeals to questions of law. So, for example, if a municipality was not obeying its official plan, there could be some rights there because the municipality already approved the official plan with the input from the public, the community at large. So, you know, to go back on its word, you know, that's obviously a big concern and not fair to investors and citizens and everyone else who rely on a municipality to keep their word. So there probably would be some flexibility in terms of like questions of law, and it may be to the upper court, or there could potentially be another tribunal that would have very limited powers to deal with those questions of law. But basically our goal was, as a committee, we don't want someone in Toronto coming in and making a decision of what our community should look like. We want to have that local input that we put a lot of staff resources into, you know, we put money into it, you know, hard-earned tax dollars into it, and hearing from individuals all across the community of all different backgrounds, you know, whether it's citizens, developers, businesses, everyone has a say in terms of what the official plan should contain. And our goal is to abide by that. And, you know, there would be obviously flexibility for reviews down the road, like official plan reviews down the road that would have the same level of consultation. And if a developer did want to do like an official plan amendment, that could still be considered with the proper public input. And basically for council to say to the developer, what are you going to offer the community? And does it meet the overall objectives of the official plan while still respecting the character of that community? So those are some of my thoughts there. And I myself, like just speaking from my perspective, I'm uncomfortable with the deferral. I believe, like from my perspective, for my position, I believe the motion has everything I need for me to support. So I won't be supporting a deferral. I understand there are other opinions around the table and I can respect that, but I won't be supporting the deferral because I have confidence in our official plan, which has already had a lot of public input, and I want to do all I can to uphold that because it really comes down to the vision for the city and what makes Cambridge different from other cities so that we're not all doing the same thing. And I know that, you know, there's a housing crisis to address, and I know that there's different planning policies that we're all trying to implement. And there's a different way to do all that. And there's a way to do that while respecting the character of the community and coming up with developments that the public can be supportive of. Thank you.
Sorry, finding my unmute button. Councillor Adshade, followed by Councillor Devine. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I don't mind. I would support a deferral until May or June. I would like to see what Amel's got to say. So I don't have a problem with the deferral, but I do. I must admit, I do like a lot of what Councillor Leggett's come forward with this motion. We are the only province that has had the OMB or the OLT. Also, too, I think that the way this set up now, I find it very frustrating because I think there's a lack of compromise because the developer can always go, oh, well, we'll just go to the OLT. So I like a lot of what this motion says. I don't have a problem waiting for the for a deferral for a few months, but I like a lot of what this motion has to say. Oh, and the question I had, sorry, too, I almost forgot. I don't know whether staff can answer this or not. What do other provinces do that don't have an OLT? Is there any appeal procedure? What do they do for any possible appeals, or are there no appeals? Just wondering if anybody knew what what Manitoba or Saskatchewan or any other province does.
I'll turn to probably Lisa Prime. Have I got the right person?
Well, through you, Mayor,
Thank you.
Your Worship, I don't have an analysis of every province. There are certainly appeal bodies in place to some extent across the different provinces. Some new legislation in Manitoba. BC has a process for review as well on legal issues. So we don't have that, but you know, it varies. Certainly the OMB is unique. I would agree with that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move to Councillor Devine, followed by Councillor Wolf. Go ahead, Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Mayor McGarry, and through the chair. We've certainly had a lot of discussion on, so it's a well-written resolution. I do believe that with what Mr. Calder had to say, and I believe Mr. Calder clarified a number of things. There's a lot of fingers in the pie right now on this issue. And there's no doubt that Queen's Park should not be dictating to the various municipalities and what they should look like. However, I could support a deferral on this issue at this point in time. I could support that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go next to Councillor Wolf. Go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I too support the spirit of the motion that Councillor Leggett offered. I know that since I've been on council, I don't think there have been that many times where it's been to the advantage of the city to go to either the OMB or the OLT. But I think that if we deferred maybe just till April, that would give us a chance to read the reports that have basically been tabled this week. I think that would give us enough time to see if we should be looking at, you know, maybe an amendment to the motion, or passing it as it is, or looking at a different solution. But I don't think we need to wait too long. And if we wait too long, whatever we say won't have any effect because we'll be in the middle of the election. So I do support a deferral, but basically just so we can read some of the reports that came out this week. Thank you.
Thank you. And just before I go to Councillor Mann, because I haven't had a chance to ask questions yet, I just wanted to note that during the discussions that we've been having, not just as big city mayors, but mayors across the province and other bodies, one of the things that was brought up actually from one of the area MPPs said that without an appeal mechanism, it would mean that anything that's contentious in there that really, you know, maybe already under some other legislation as well, will have no appeal mechanism by the local communities. And one of those things that he brought up was gravel pits. So leaving our communities and our property owners and developers, as well as our community members, with no appeal mechanism is a problem. And it is problematic when you've got occasional municipalities and councils across Ontario that have not kept up with their own official plans and have made a decision against it. And then there's no appeal mechanism by either the property owner or the local community when the council isn't keeping up with their official plan. So I think that my question would then be again to staff, would there, you know, depending on the type of development or the type of application to councils, would this particular dissolution of an OLT with no other mechanism mean that there's absolutely no appeal mechanism? I just really want to hear confirmation of that.
So through you, Your Worship, I don't know if David wants me to comment. You would have a judicial opportunity for rule of law for certain, which I frankly think would be a big challenge to actually get access to the courts for that.
Thank you. And I would agree. We've also been discussing the lack of court access, especially since we're even having trouble getting our POA fines returned to us because the courts are so overbooked. We're not able to get those as well. All right, I'm going to move next to Councillor Mann. Go ahead, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what I'd like to do then is I would like to defer this. I would like to propose that we defer this and we defer it to June. If we defer it to June, it gives us enough time to review it, and the election, the provincial election is in June, and any decisions that will be made in relation to the motion that's been brought forward by Councillor Liggett will have been made by June. So I would say the first meeting that we have in June. And I would like to call for a seconder, please. I have Councillor Reid.
Councillor Reid. Okay, and just speaking to the deferral, time and place. Councillor Devine, is that a legacy hand?
No, it's not.
All right,
It was
go
a
ahead.
legacy hand, but I did have to speak again. Time and place, okay? The time I'm a little concerned about. If we wait till June, there's an election in June. Okay, I would like to, and AMO, we talked about AMO, it's good of them to take a position, but we don't meet with AMO till, I believe it's August. I do believe that we have to get this on the table long before June. The very latest would be May, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go next to Councillor Liggett.
I can't support the deferral with that type of a date. I think, as Mr. Calder said, there is enough time to have this done by April. We could have all the answers back by then, so I'd prefer to see April.
Councillor Wolf, go ahead.
I agree that April is a date that I could support and June is too late.
I'm going to return to Councillor Mann to see what he thinks. And go ahead, Councillor Mann.
Well, Madam Chair, then I would split the difference and I'll say May.
Okay, I'll turn to Councillor Reid, who is a seconder. Is May acceptable to you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then I'm going to call for the vote on the deferral to May. Councillor, I'm just going to see if Madam Clerk wants to just tidy that up.
So the deferral would read that the motion, Ontario Land Tribunal dissolution, brought forward by Councillor Liggett on March 1st be deferred until council meeting in May. Would you like the first council meeting or second meeting?
What are the dates in May, Madam Clerk? Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. What are the dates in May?
That was going to be my question anyway.
You know what, at this point, I don't know. I'd have to let you know. I know there's two. So if you wanted the later one, you could do that.
We'll take the second day in May. Second date, please.
Okay. I'm calling the vote for the second meeting in May. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshade.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Nay, because of the May date.
Councillor Meta.
Opposed.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
Opposed because of the May date.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
Opposed because of the May date.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And when we do get information in from big city mayors and AMO about some of their thinking, then we'll make sure that we keep forwarding it to council members so that you're well informed as we all move forward as municipalities in Ontario towards what these decisions are going to be about. So we're moving forward now to the following motion, which is related to items of correspondence and presentations of council. Councillor Wolf, you have the motion. Will you please read it?
Through you, Madam Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Devine. Recommendation that all presentations and correspondence from the March 1st, 2022 special council meeting be received.
Thank you. Does council have any comments? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshay.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Aye.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is consideration of bylaws, and Councillor Liggett, you have this motion. Will you please read it?
Sorry, I'm trying to desperately get to it. Maybe if the clerk would read that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I could have Madam Clerk read it. No problem. Go ahead.
Moved by Councillor Liggett, seconded by Councillor Devine. Recommendation that the following bylaws listed under the heading of Introduction and Consideration of Bylaws be enacted and passed. 22012 being a bylaw of the City of Cambridge to adopt amendment number 50 to the City of Cambridge Official Plan 2012 as amended, site-specific policy 8.10.24 245 Riverbank Drive. 22013 being a bylaw of the Corporation of the City of Cambridge to amend zoning bylaw 15085 as amended in respect of a 31.2 hectare 75.37 AC site located south of Freeport Creek, east of the city boundary and CP Railway, and west and north of Maple Grove Road, Intermarket Cam Limited, 30T14103.
Thank you. So I'll now ask the clerk to call for a vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshay.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Aye.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. Our next item is a confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Adshay, you have this motion. Please read it.
I do, Your Worship. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hamilton. 22-014, that bylaw being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Cambridge be enacted and passed.
Thank you. I'll ask the clerk to call for the vote. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Adshay.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Aye.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. Well, we've now reached the end of the agenda for this evening. So Councillor Mann, you have this happy motion for the close of meeting. Would you please read it?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Mehta, that the council meeting does now adjourn at 8:18 p.m.
Thank you. And I'll ask Madam Clerk to call for the vote.
Councillor Adshay.
In favor.
Councillor Devine.
Aye.
Councillor Mehta.
In favor.
Councillor Hamilton.
In favor.
Councillor Liggett.
In favor.
Councillor Mann.
In favor.
Councillor Reid.
In favor.
Councillor Wolf.
In favor.
Mayor McGarry.
In favor.
And that carries.
Thank you. And that concludes our meeting for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Be safe, look after each other, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good, everyone.